All right, I've got 7 o'clock. So I think we will go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I want to remind everybody to mute yourself and turn off your video so things run smoothly. We will be collecting questions in the chat and we will feed them to Dr. Baxter-Slye at the end. So if you can drop your questions in there as we go, that would be fantastic. I would like to introduce Dr. Jaime Baxter-Slye. She has earned numerous degrees in her career, the most recent of which is her Ph.D. in biological sciences, with a focus on aquatic ecology from University of North Texas, where she is currently a clinical assistant professor for ecology education. She is also a scholar with the Advanced Environmental Research Institute and leads the Ecological Action Studio, where she boosts community engagement and sustainability and ecological restoration. She is a well-recognized figure in her field for her leadership and her mentorship, as well as her projects and passion that serve to bridge science, education, and community stewardship. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Baxter-Slye.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and to speak with y'all tonight. It's the Blackland Prairie, it's my heart, and I just enjoy any time that I can speak to any of you that live over in that neck of the woods. And so maybe you've seen some of this talk before, so it'll be a repeat, but I tried to add some updates from the work that we're doing over here. And so we have some exciting new things to talk about. So in my work at UNT, so my job as a clinical professor, I get to do really fun things. I'm not worried about bringing in millions of dollars worth of grants. I get to focus on the undergraduates, and so primarily the students that I work with are all ecology majors in their undergraduate degree, and then I have some graduate students too. So if I'm thinking about, what I want to be when I grow up or what I want to do in my life, the most important thing to me is when I drive around DFW, I get so fired up and mad, and I'm looking at this retention pond, and there's no plants over here. And what are these invasive trees that they're planting everywhere? And I'm sure that I'm preaching to the choir here. But really for me, when I wake up and I think about my family and I want my family to be happy, and then I think about the students, but I'm really thinking about how can we save as many Texas native plants and animals, fungi, bacteria, you name it, possible in my job. And then, secondarily, how can I get these ecology majors, on the right track to a good career and be competitive with A&M and Tech and UT? So those are really my two missions that I have. And just for funsies, just to test out the chat, who can name any of the organisms on that screen right now? Just go ahead and put it in the chat if you know it. Yep, we got a monarch. So we've got a female monarch, and she is sitting on a particular flower. Got a red-tailed hawk, yep. And the bird on the right is a dickcissel. The meadowlark was a good guess, but if you take a little bit of just looking at the like more brown colored wing there and the coloration's just a little bit different. And a Maximilian, that was a good guess, Maximilian. That's actually a common sunflower. Yep, and then that would be Greg's mist flower there. So good. You guys are like on the right track to just being able to name. And if you can't name something, then you can't conserve it, or you can't conserve what you don't know, basically. And so this iNaturalist that Sam Kieschnick has got us all hooked on, teaches us our plants and animals and also gives us a place that we can come together to explore our native area. So this picture of the dickcissel, this bird that's over here, I was out at the prairie reconstruction area that we have, and it's often that I'm crying out there because I'll find a new invasive plant. And this particular day was a day of just joyous exuberation because after all of that hard work, I hear this whistling from, this calling out from the sunflower, and it was a dick thistle. And it was in, June. And so I start reading about the dick thistle, whom I met, out here. And I read that they have babies, they nest on the ground in our prairie grasses. And so for me, even though our pollinative prairie is suffering from an invasion of Johnson grass, when you walk through the Johnson grass, you can hear the baby dick thistles. And so, you got to take what you get, even though we're still trying to get rid of that Johnson grass. So I'm going to go through just a couple of stories. The first story is about the pollinative prairie and how we managed to get a prescribed burn in the city limits. And then I want to tell you a quick story about our newest project at a development called Coal Ranch. But before I begin, might be a repeat to all of us, but sometimes it's helpful to see how other people present this material. And so whenever I talk to municipalities and I'm trying to coerce them, if you will, or tell them why they should be including these native plants, we look at the population and the urban sprawl. And so this is the year 2000. And the deep red portion is where there's all impervious surface. So rooftops, concrete, anywhere. This could even be like a golf course or Bermuda grass lawn, that the water doesn't really penetrate into. It just rolls off of whenever it rains. Here you've got your four major EPA level 4 ecoregions, the northern Blackland Prairie, and then this little skinny stretch of eastern cross timbers, the Grand Prairie, and the western cross timbers. And I found that it's useful for me whenever I'm driving across DFW to look at the soil of the development areas. So if you've got a place where they're digging up the soil, have a peek. What does that look like? And so you kind of get a good idea. So if you're over here, it's black gumbo, and you cross over into the eastern cross timbers where we've got the woodbine formation, it turns red, right? And sandy. And then over in the Grand Prairie, it becomes more pale and chalky looking, where we have the Duck Creek limestone formation, where the Cretaceous, inland seabed came up. So really neat to just kind of study our soil types, and it gives you a good inclination of, what kind of plants to expect. So if we flash forward to the year 2023, this is what the Metroplex looks like. So I put a star where UNT is. Um, One fun thing to do is kind of look at Leela, which is here in the heart, right? And you can see the open spaces. The other thing that I noticed from these maps is the constriction of our waterways into tiny capillaries. And a lot of the municipalities, they have restrictions on how close development can get. Sometimes it's 100 foot from center point of a stream. Sometimes it goes up to 150, and sometimes it goes as low as 50 feet. So those decisions are made by people, on the Parks Board, City Council, that type of thing. So if you haven't served in some of that capacity, lots of times people that, have knowledge like you are really invaluable for making those decisions. If you ask me how close development could get, we would be talking about, half a mile, but then they laugh at me. Um, what else can we say about DFW? Well, not only do we have these four major ecoregions, we are also within the central flyway of the avian pathway. And so we get a lot of migratory birds that utilize our habitat and need good habitat here for crossover, migration sites. We have a lot of overwintering sparrows that use these grasslands. And so these numbers right here, people throw numbers around all the time, but those are big numbers. A net loss of, 3 billion birds or 29% of the abundance from the 1970 count. But grassland birds, which we can grow grasslands really well here in our area, they have had the largest population loss since 1970, with 74% of grassland species declining, like that dick thistle that we had on the front slide. So birds usually grab the attention of most of everybody. Of course, the monarchs are also sexy, and people like to talk about monarchs and milkweed. And we do have the monarchs. We had a great migration this year. I was so lucky to have the students out at the prairie right in the thick of the monarch migration, and they were everywhere, and all of the butterflies were there too. It was just wonderful. So during, the migration, we often bring up milkweed, but we know that there are other plants that are very important, like that mist flower that we saw on that front page. The males use a chemical in that plant to create a pheromone that they store in a little pouch on their hind wing, and they use that to entice the females to mate. So again, big numbers here though that matter. In the 2023 count, they had a decrease of 59%. So if you don't do the monarch tagging, you should consider doing that. Those monarch tags is how we know and we get those counts. There are people with binoculars looking at the butterflies in Mexico for those tags. One thing that happened to me this fall is I got to teach UNT's insect course. So my mentor, Dr. James Kennedy, retired, and somebody needed to pick up that course, and so I did. And so it was a all new course structure. It was a lot of fun to do. But one of the things that I learned was that the monarchs are not the only ones migrating through here. Mike Quinn from Texas A&M has put together a really good list of all of the other insects that migrate through our area. So you've got a lot of dragonflies that migrate through here, some of the beetles over here. The large milkweed bug is migrating right along with the monarchs. Some leaf hoppers, grasshoppers, and then look at all of these lepidopterans. We've got some moths, some butterflies. And so when we're looking at these butterflies migrating through here, and you think, oh my goodness, there are a lot of butterflies. Some of them are migrating. And so I think that we should expand some of our messaging. People get kind of tired of the same old story all of the time. And so if we start saying, well, it's not just the monarch, it's all of these butterflies too, maybe it will entice and reinvigorate our charge to get these native plants out there. Okay, so the bottom line is in DFW, we've got 4 major ecoregions. Denton County alone has the highest number of different kinds of soil types in the state of Texas, which means more different kinds of plants. We live in this lovely, climate. We think it's hot, but it's actually really good for growing lots of plants. And we are winners at the City Nature Challenge, or at least we come in the top 5 every year. And you don't really think of DFW as a biodiversity hotspot, but man, we've got so many different habitat types. And when we all compete, we really show off what we have here in DFW. And all of this is in one of the 5 most populated areas in the United States. The other thing that usually really entices people is the money. And so there are several articles that you can read. This one is my favorite by Elmquist from 2015, who shows that there's 6 major ecosystem services that nature provides back to humans. And they come in the form of pollution, air quality, carbon sequestration, or pulling that carbon from the atmosphere and storing it somewhere. We've got stormwater reduction, energy savings, recreation, and positive health effects. And so what's interesting is whenever they lay out the benefit to cost ratios, so over here on the y-axis, you've got the benefit to cost ratios. So basically, the bang for your buck. If you're going to restore an ecosystem, how much it costs versus how much you get out of it. Look at our grasslands. They rank as number 1. And so we have this really great opportunity to build more of our native prairies, restore them or reconstruct them back. And we get the biggest bang for your buck of any ecosystem restoration that you can do. If that's not enough, we talk about water and how these deep roots of these prairie plants can hold water. And then also the carbon sequestration, which takes maybe a little bit of more understanding, but sometimes that really does entice people to do this, especially if you throw in soil erosion. So protecting our soils from, rolling down the river into the Gulf of Mexico. it takes something like 500 years for, just an inch of topsoil to become established. So our soil is non-renewable. Okay, so all of that was probably a review. And I'm preaching to the choir again. And so what have we done here at UNT? Okay, so whenever I first started working at UNT as a lab supervisor, I wanted to create an ecology laboratory that wasn't just like a cookbook where you go in, and you do a little thing and you forget it at the end of the week, right? And so right about that time, my friend Jenny, she called me up and said, "Hey, I think there's a prairie remnant at Discovery Park, which is like it's like a little campus north of the main UNT campus. Used to be an old Texas Instruments building, and UNT bought it. But back here, where you've got this riparian area and this pond, on this slope is a Duck Creek limestone formation." I don't think it's ever been plowed. And I know they used to run cows on it, but there were a lot of our prairie plants back there. And so she said, wouldn't it be cool to, turn the whole field into a prairie? I thought, sure, I love growing plants. It was really the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And, we're still battling invasives. But we've got some little educational flower beds to show people what these plants can look like at your house. We've got some signage out there and we've done some other things. So when we started, it was a Bermuda grass field, and I didn't really know jack squat about prairie restoration, like not at all. And so I just started talking to people. So, you talk to the Freiheits, you talk to Steidman, you talk to Connemara, and all of these people, and they all have good ideas about what to do. So we tried all of it. And the solarization is what really worked the best, but man, was it a pain. We rolled out these really long sheets of black plastic, left them on there during the heat of the summer. And when we took it away, it was pretty solid bare ground, and we seeded, and that to this day has been the best portion of the prairie. We tried putting hugel cultures down. We tried putting dino dirt down. Just everything that anybody said to do, we tried it. We've gotten a lot of funding from a We Mean Green Fund, which has students pay in $5 per semester. And then we also have with that money, we've installed a lot of plants. We've learned how to grow plants, and we've purchased a lot of seed, built a tool shed. So you can see here prior to our reconstruction effort, here's the field. The pond is so sad. They mowed right up to the edge. They didn't allow this like bioswale area to develop at all. And then over time, this is 2013, we haven't started yet on the right-hand side. And here's us kind of thinking about things, drawing out what we want to see. Over here, we've got students telling to see if that would work. Don't tell. That brings out the weeds more than anything. And then we hand seeded a lot of the plots. If we move through time, we've got 2017 over here on the right-hand side, and you can see that whole patch that was solarized there. You can also see that the pond is starting to fill in on the riparian area, and in that particular year, we had a huge algal bloom. Here's the example of the hugel culture that we did by rolling out that cardboard and putting a mixture of mulch and soil over it. We just did a scalping on some portions of it. We learned how to grow plants in the greenhouse, including milkweed. And it just took a whole army of students, to get all of those plants in the ground. So we're moving through time. You can kind of see there's the homogeneous field is kind of gone. You can start to see some coloration and some habitat heterogeneity throughout the field. The riparian area is still filling in 2019. By 2023, you can definitely see a difference between the mowed areas and our prairie reconstruction. So it's neat. The grounds department has completely listened to us about the pond area. We do have a beaver. The beaver takes care of the typha. Really a little bit of damage to the trees, but really no problems. thus far. No clogs, no nothing, everybody causes such a ruckus about the beavers. Of course, it's not running water, it's a pond, but these are the examples of the educational flower beds that we did and the tool shed that they built. And then something really cool happened. The Louisville Aquatic Ecosystem Research Facility with the Army Corps of Engineers, or LARF, we've got some students working out there, and what they did was they gifted us a mother culture of 6 or 7 aquatic species of plants. And one of the students, Brand Richter, who worked at LARF, came out and taught us the ins and outs of how to grow these plants in the greenhouse. And nowadays we can pump out about 4,000 aquatic plants in about 4 months. It's pretty easy to grow aquatic plants. I thought it was going to be more challenging, but really all you need is a tub and some soil and your mother plant stock, and they do fairly well. Um, so we've been doing that. So we included some aquatic plants into the pond areas. The city of Corinth really liked our pond and gave us some money to grow some aquatic plants and install them in one of their ponds too. So this is kind of spread. Corinth has also asked us to help seed one of their plots. City of Louisville had us help seed a whole boulevard. So the message is getting out, and it's been very exciting to kind of help people in up along, the 35 corridor. So this is where it looks like in April of 2025. And we've managed to document 1,170 taxa, and that space is only 20 acres. And so this is not accurate, whatever, but it's kind of fun to look at. So if I look at the Kanza iNaturalist project and I look at the Leela iNaturalist project, and then I look at our iNaturalist project, the numbers are interesting. For our little 8 hectares, man, it's running pretty strong with these larger areas in numbers of plants and invertebrates and herps and birds and mammals. And of course, some of the plants that are tallied there are invasive. But it does show a little glimpse of a window that it really doesn't matter if it's big or small, just do it, right? If you've got an area, just put it on there and see what happens. Build it and they will come. We do deal with a lot of non-natives. This 20% and the 13% exotic here, that doesn't mean coverage. That means tally count of taxa. If I were to estimate the coverage, I would say it's probably about 50 to 60% covered in exotics. So it's a battle, and we've been at it for 7 years. But the pond's gorgeous. We've got a lot of birds. We do a lot of kestrel banding out there. The kestrels are residents. The hawks are residents. The fish are loving it, and that water is crystal clear. So many birds. We've got 82, actually, I think that number is now 88 birds documented, and a lot of breeding is happening. A lot of baby birds at the prairie, including the eastern bluebirds. We do have a live vulture cam for the black vultures that nest over by the building. We got lots and lots of different, mammals. My graduate student, Matt Clare, was able to document an otter on the game cam, lots of snakes, and not, I have never seen like a water moccasin or a cottonmouth out there. I think that these other snakes keep those guys away. Lots of spiders. I have been just so excited about the spiders, and my students wrote a paper about the terrestrial invertebrates out at the prairie. And in their paper, they told me about the dotted wolf spider. And the dotted wolf spider apparently needs grass to be able to float to when they're moving around. And so, lo and behold, if you look at iNaturalist, the dotted wolf spider is only in grassy areas for the most part. And so they really need that grass to be able to be successful. We have 19 taxa of native bees, which often go unappreciated. People talk about the Western honeybee all of the time. I view that as a domestic agricultural animal. And all of the native bees, need that food and those resources. Lots of butterflies, lots of moths. Oops. And so we're growing and we're getting more sophisticated. We got some money for a pavilion that's being built right now and the walkway. The mowing path has gotten under control. Sometimes it's hard to tell a contractor where to mow, but they have really done a good job, like keeping in their very small boundary of where they can mow pathways. And so it sounds great, but in July it looked like this. Just a weedy mess. You know, that's field bindweed, those little white flowers out there. It's just a weedy mess, and it really needed some cleanup. There was, 7 years of thatch buildup. And so the city of Denton wildland firefighters and I got together and we said, what if we could do a city of Denton wildland fire training out at the pollinated prairie, smack dab in the middle of the houses and the apartments and Discovery Park? And so it took a lot of signatures. Basically, everyone at UNT had to sign something. It was the fire marshal, president, lawyers, like everybody. We also had to get TCEQ approval. So if you ever need that, Jessica Sprague, that was sort of hard to find, like who would give that to us, who was the name at TCEQ to provide that. And then the City of Denton Fire Marshal and City Manager also had to sign off on it. And so then we waited. Once we got all those signatures, we waited. We had to wait for the wind to be right. We had to wait for the humidity to be right, the temperature to be right. It had to be not be a niece's birthday. All the things had to come into play, and it had to be when students weren't in class because that road is used. So finally, the day came, July 30th, in the heat of the summer.
All right. How's everybody doing on water?
So it was very surreal to set that ablaze. It was scary. But it worked very, very well. The next video I'm going to show you is going to show you how it's very important to get the wind right. Because the wind was just so, it wasn't blowing over into the neighborhood, that smoke stayed right on top of the prairie. The other reason why it does that is the prairie fire gets so hot, it kind of creates its own, I don't know, weather system. And so you can see like this plume of smoke go straight up in the air, which really helped, make the neighbors not be so mad at us.
Yeah, the smoke column, look up. Yeah, the smoke column's pulling up in the middle. Yeah.
And you could see it for miles. Social media, we had to learn how to react to social media, and make sure that, everybody knew that it was a prescribed burn, that occurred within the city limits. So in Denton, this has only happened at Clear Creek and at North Lakes Park and the Pollinated Prairie. It was very successful, and it was a team of firefighters. The students didn't really do anything but help watch afterwards to make sure all of the embers were out. So this was the team of firefighters that did that burn. And when they were done, it was all gone. All the Johnson grass was gone. Everything was gone. Um, and so I didn't really know what to expect. And it was surgical. They are able to like protect structures with a pre-burn. So just very, very surgical. We had a drone imagery by Dr. John South from the geography department come out and shoot drone footage for us. And so then like slightly after, about 2 weeks after, we started to get the green coming back up. And man, was I excited to see what I would find. The first thing I found was a whole bunch of passion flower. I didn't even know we had that much passion flower. Passion flower up like bonkers. The other thing is milkweed, the Maximilian sunflower, the goldenrod. They were like wet fire. They came back very well. And then I also found some native grasses that I didn't even know we had because they came up really well too. I think we're up to 11 switch grasses and one big blue stem and three Indian grass. So really excited about that. So we do have a problem growing grass out there, and that's a whole nother story for another time. And I think it's due to a lack of arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. So I have some students working on that too. But you know what else came up? The Johnson grass and the bindweed. And so I wanted to test some methodology out on, what works the best to get rid of the Johnson grass. So I'd heard that mowing works, like repetitive mowing, just make that Johnson grass utilize all of its energy. And then, of course, herbicide. So I started doing that in September, late August and September. And the other thing that we had to think about is when we were going to put down seed and spend money on all of this seed, what would we choose? And so I put together a list of some really aggressive plants along with the grasses. And the other thing that I tried, Native American seed, we really wanted to try putting a cover crop on this time. And so I used the cereal rye grain cover crop that they sell. So I went really heavy on the switch and really heavy on the Maximilian sunflower and goldenrod, and then a mixture of other things. So you can see the front of the prairie. Over on the right is where I glyphosated. So I left that standing until I could get the glyphosate on it. And then over on the left, you can see where I just mowed and mowed and mowed Johnson grass. We were out there each Monday morning just taking a mower to that Johnson grass. And then I would leave the stands of Maximilian sunflower and goldenrod. So we'll see how that turns out next year. Um, After that happened, we had the whole thing mowed as short as we could get it, so we could get good seed to soil contact. And so the students hand seeded half of the field, and then I had a contractor come out and seed the other half. And then we put the seed down, and then there was no rain. There was rain on the Friday that we got done seeding, and then nothing after that for, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks straight. You guys know it hasn't really rained very much. And so that has been pretty scary to watch the doves just sit there and peck at the seed that was on the ground. So I went out there last week, and it does appear that I can detect some annuals coming up from the seed. I can see Engelmann daisy and some more of the perennials still there. And so half of the prairie looks like some of the germination did work really well. And then some, I think that the birds and the hispid cotton rats got to a lot of it. So time will tell. Now we play the waiting game until spring. So that's where we are with the pollinative prairie. And so now I want to transition to this news story about the Cole Ranch. And so around last year, Jennifer Alexander of the Cole family and O.C. Vest, who is a manager of Cole Ranch, they got the dean of the College of Science and myself and some other professors to come out and talk. And really, their question was simple. How would UNT like to be involved in the development of this very big chunk of land right off of 35 south of Denton? And my brain went straight to rescue the plants, rescue the seed, install the native plants, show the developer and show a neighborhood what it could look like if we did things a little bit more conscientious in these development areas. And so I want to preface this by saying I am not a fan of development. I love the native areas, and I wish that we could keep all of it. But I'm also a realist, and I know that They were having encroachment with utility lines. Loop 288 is going smack through the middle of the property. And so they wanted to be able to conserve another bigger ranch that's over to the west, and so made the hard decision to go ahead and develop this area. And so if it's going to be done, then why not help? Is kind of where I'm coming at from this. And I want to also say that I went into this being very fearful that I would be used, as kind of like a greenwashing kind of thing, like, oh, look at all the great stuff that they're doing. We're doing it environmentally conscious. And so when I talk to the developers and when I talk to the Cole family, they are doing so many other things other than what we're doing to provide good stewardship of the property. And so we'll go through kind of what's going on here. So first off, our vision is to create and maintain a resilient and livable community utilizing the native landscape. So how many times have you driven past a development and it's called like, I don't know, I don't want to say one because that would be rude, but you think of like a name like, I'll just make one up, like the Great Prairie or the Rolling Hills Prairie or something like that. And you take a look and there's no prairie left. It's like what used to be, right? It really ticks me off. Or they say something about a certain kind of tree, right, in the name, but they've destroyed all of the trees. So in this particular development, they are going to be building on some of, the prairie land, of course, but they are also leaving about half of it open in this phase one. The mission is to rescue native Texas Grand Prairie ecoregion seed and plants prior to development, and then we are bringing them back to the UNT greenhouse, and then we will reinstall them back into the development once it's ready. And so what you're looking at here is like a hillside. And so I didn't really know what to expect. I thought maybe a lot of it would just be like old field, because it was been grazed by cows. And so I was like, yeah, we'll probably be able to find some stuff. But when I got out there, if I were to rate a lot of the prairie land, if Climber Meadow is a 10 out of 10, there's portions here that I would rate like this hillside, maybe a 7 out of 10. And then there's other portions that's more like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Basically, because you're finding every single species of grass that you could ask for. Lots of other fun plants that I have pictures of upcoming. So I was delighted because there was lots to rescue, but I was also heartbroken that this would be housing someday. And so it is another difficult emotional project for sure. So far we have documented 282 species since we've been out there since September. So we go twice a week for about 4 hours to do our work. And so we are capturing the biodiversity as we can along with the rescuing of the plants. This is where Cole Ranch is located. And so I kid you not, that purple is really the polygon of Cole Ranch. It is huge. And Hunter Ranch is right below it and is also being developed. And so the corridor here along 35W, will be developed soon. Now, the Cole Ranch and the Hunter Ranch are not the same people. The Cole Ranch is part of the Cole family, whereas the Hunter Ranch, I believe, is an entirely different other project. And so you can see here that Denton Record Chronicle put out the official announcement, 4,000 home sales, but that is over a 20-year build. So the first phase one does not have 4,000 homes. It's saying that over 20 years, that is what is to be expected. And in the system, they will have an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, which is exciting for me because if I continue my work out there, I will be able to build, education modules that has the kids, go on field trips within their community to really help them get a sense of place. If we look at this is the entire, I think it's 3,160 acres. A lot of it you can see, kind of maybe see, is agricultural land. A lot of it is heavily grazed, and then the phase one portion is less so. You can see that Denton Municipal Airport is right to the north, so there is a lot of air traffic overhead. And then not to be confused with Hunter Ranch, where Pilot Knob is an entirely different community. So if we zoom into where phase one is, that red circle shows you where phase one is. There is a 9-acre soil conservation reservoir. Um, it's not well vegetated. And so one of our key things that we want to do is revegetate the retention pond. We've already planted some aquatic plants in there. You can also see that it's got a fracking site that it will stay. So not the best scenario, but one we have to work with. Um, this is a draft copy of what the housing will look like. So I can kind of scroll back. You can look at what it looks like. So this light area is like a escarpment that overlooks Denton. Swimming pool is going to be right here. So keep your eye right there. Swimming pool, boom, right there. And so what we're seeing is areas that we have to target first. So anywhere that is white, where a house will be, is where we're targeting the seed collection and rescue first. We've gotten a lot of that done. We still have about a month to go before the bulldozers come in. And then down this escarpment area that is where I would rate the like 9 out of 10 prairie ecoregion, if not a 10 out of 10. I just don't think the cows grazed as heavy, in this hilly portion. And so one of my questions is, yes, it shows green that they're leaving open space, right? But what does that mean? Does that mean that the heavy equipment also has to come up here with the swimming pool? Like what does it really mean? So I think what we need to figure out is like, do we need to get in there and target these plants too? Or are they safe? These are things we still have to figure out. In the middle here is what they're calling Quail Meadow Park. That I have got a direct answer that the heavy machinery will stay out of here. However, when we did our first bioassessment, it's not that lovely as the rest of it. And so it also means that some restoration will have to occur in that area. Where you're seeing the like little orange dots is where they're going to leave space for us to plant like our educational beds using these plants. And then once we get our mother stock, and then I think a lot of this will indeed be left untouched without heavy machinery or anything. We'll still have a seed base. Then hopefully we can come in this portion and then help restore what needs to happen there. Over here on this edge is where the model homes are going. And so we've basically said that along this edge of the pond is where we're going to put our heaviest riparian vegetation. And then over here, leave it open a little bit more so people can fish and have some recreation. And then if you see here, this is Loop 288 coming right alongside here. So it'll extend down into this area. And then Hickory Creek runs along the east and the north side. So we've already taken a look at that. It's got heavy privet infestation. And so I would like to do some restoration along Hickory Creek. And so here are some plants that we found. You'll know many of them. So the Gaillardia, we've been picking that seed because those are really easy. Common yarrow, Texas grama, the basket flower. I have still found seeds even this late in the year in the basket flower seed heads. So we're either collecting seed or also live plants or both. And luckily, the Paint and Flower Farm and also Sam taught us how Liatris is super easy to dig up. They have bulbs. And so if you get into the Liatris and just shovel down a little bit, surprisingly, that's very easy to uproot. We've got some Aristida out there, little blue stem, big blue stem, Texas cupgrass, hairy grama, Indian grass, white tridents. I mean, basically any grass that you could want is out there. Some interesting forbs. I'm used to talking about Blackland Prairie all of the time, and what I've come to love is how interesting this mixed grass prairie is, all with its, different variety of companion plants that are there. Um, We also have, let's see, this longleaf buckwheat is one of them that I hadn't met before, that has a really generous woody root structure that is good for holding soil in place. There's, of course, giant blue sage out there, a lot of coneflowers out there. So just a really neat diversity of plants that we got to work with. Let's see, what else do we have? The Lone Star gumweed, vine mesquite there, lots of frog fruit that's easy to propagate in the greenhouse. And then we have some mysteries. We've got some Artemisia out there. And I looked up, how to identify Artemisia. I'm pretty sure it's the silver wormwood, which is the native one. But it smells delicious, and so we ripped up a bunch of it to rescue. And then we've got this weird poppy mallow. I haven't ever seen the structure of a young poppy mallow look like that. So if you have, put it in the chat. Am I right? Is this the light poppy mallow? I don't know. And then this one right here, we thought this was Engelmann daisy, but look how rough it is. I'm not convinced. Sam and I kind of think maybe that is that not the woolly white, but the other old plainsman, the kind that has like the pink tinge to it, perhaps. Lots and lots of penstemon. The penstemon is also to easy to dig up. And so we've collected a lot of seed, but that's kind of hard to germinate. And so I think we're going to focus more on digging more of that up. We've got both species of the dahlia out there. We found one compass plant today and did some work to rescue that. Hope to find more. And then I'm pretty sure it's Arkansas yucca that we have out there, not Glen Rose, but we went ahead and are rescuing that yucca too. And then the critters. These harvester ant mounds, there's one out there and it was the biggest that I've ever seen. And so I think I have convinced the developer. I didn't have to convince Jennifer Alexander from the Cole family because she loves them. But I think I've convinced the developer to try to rescue those harvester ants. I think that if we dig a hole and we use a tree spade, if we take the tree spade, get the colony, saran wrap the tree spade with the colony, and then go deliver it into the new hole and do that at night, that we might have some success. Ken Steigman, Dr. Steigman from Leela tried that one time. But you can kind of see that overlook there. Lots of spiders, lots of birds, big deer. There's also some evidence of hog, wild boar out there. But, you would think that it would be kind of hard to dig these plants out, with their roots going so deep. But as it turns out, there's a limestone bedrock layer that keeps these roots actually pretty shallow. So the students are able to get these plants out with quite a bit of ease. Essentially. This is a root slayer. Tools matter. Don't buy cheap shovels. That root slayer really does a good job, although it's kind of short.
Yeah. Nice. What is that? I'm videoing.
Oh, this is little blue stem.
Nice. Okay, let me do it.
So the students are having a good time learning the plants, knowing which ones to spend most of their effort on. Oop.
Okay.
And so we can't do this alone. So this week, the Elm Fork chapter of the Texas Master Naturalist came out and helped us. That was our haul from that day. You can see all the seeds and all of the bulbs of the liatris and penstemon that we grabbed. Sam came out and, let us know what we were doing was right on par and everything looked good. And I have probably now about 20 volunteers from UNT that come out, and then 4 of the students are actually getting paid. So Cole Ranch gave us $35,000 to go from September until April, rescuing plants, and that includes like these tubs. So instead of pots, we're just putting them in the tubs. It just is easier to transport. It's easier to break up that root structure for replanting later. This is the old ranch, like bunkhouse. They're going to turn that into like a museum that you can look into. But right now we found evidence of hog in there. So they'll need to be dealt with somehow. It's hard. You can't fly the airplanes to shoot the hogs because of the airport, and you can't burn because of the airport. So there's some definite challenges out there. This is a picture of what our greenhouse looks like. We're filling up, and now I'm going to start buying tubs to put under the tables. so we can just stack more in there. And then the seed, when it comes back to the lab, we let it dry, and then we have a series of devices that we kind of rub the seed over to remove the chaff and separate the seed. All of that gets mixed together. We just keep the seed mixed. We don't try to separate it. And so the idea is that we'll go in and we'll plant these plants as they make sense, and then we'll intersperse the seed throughout. So I'm not really sure how big of an area in total that we'll get to, but we're going to give it our all to be able to do the most. And so here's some pictures of the pond planting. So we're using these cages to keep out any herbivores while these aquatic plants become established. And the development team does not have a problem with leaving those cages for years. I think we need to probably leave them for about 2 to 3 years just to ensure that they get very well established. And so the other thing that the developers have really taken an ear to is if we're going to say that we're native and we're doing the best that we can, go all the way. So we took a look at the first draft of the plant list, and there were some, non-native species on there, not just like the adaptive species, okay, yes, but also just like some non-natives. And so we got with the Painted Flower Farm and we revised that plant list to be native, whether it's from Central Texas and up or straight from here. And we also had to check to see if those plants would be commercially available. So this would be like their regular landscaping plants outside of what we're doing with our little conservation sites. I thought about baling it, but it turns out it's too rocky and hilly to bale. But if you do ever run across a development company, baling might work. You can unroll the bale, and it still has the seeds. The other thing that I learned from Weston Neiman from Native American Seed is he said that if the area is big enough, they can actually come out with their seed collecting equipment and do a harvest on a large scale. So trying to save the harvester ants, um, really leaving our open space like untouched. Like when we say untouched, like I don't want the heavy equipment even driving over it. And in any soil that they remove, and put it again, in some of these like sites, conservation sites, so we still have the soil to work with when we go back and replant. And then constantly thinking about what those future educational outreach and habitat management goals. And so in the spring, I teach a class called the Ecological Action Studio, and the Coal Ranch will be one of the projects. And so those students will try out their training. They're mostly seniors, and so let's see what you can do. And they'll come up with a habitat management plan after we spend some time out there for them to learn about the area too. So just different pictures, just very proud students, feeling good about what they're doing despite the emotional haul of knowing that this will be developed. And so with that, I will provide this talk to you guys in case you ever want to use it for your future reference. And if you want to help, if you have other projects, I heard Sam Kieschnick told me that your chapter does a lot of this work over in your neck of the woods. And so I want to hear some of your challenges and what ingenious ideas you guys have thought up too. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Baxter-Slye. That was amazing. The work that y'all are doing is it just speaks to my heart, and I know it does to the rest of the chapter as well. Nancy, did we have any questions come in? I didn't see any.
Not yet. There's nothing in the chat.
Okay. Did we have any questions from, oh, here we have a couple now. Let's see.
Yeah,
So we have,
I
go
see
ahead.
the one from Ashley. Did you try doing both herbicide and repetitive mowing in the same area at the pollinated prairie? And the answer to that is we just have kind of tried things over time. So yeah, I think the part that I mowed, we have put herbicide, but I haven't done that like at the same time. So that's a good thing to think about.
All right. Well, we're getting lots of thank yous. It looks like everyone really enjoyed the presentation. It is inspiring work that you're doing. Just double checking. We don't have any more questions. Well, let's see. Will you seed again in the spring?
Oh, that's another good question. Yes. I think so. What I want to do is see if the cereal rye takes. If it doesn't take, well, I will certainly have the bromes pop up. And so what I want to do is wait until they are right at ready for seed, right before they drop seed, and then mow it, but mow it at a height where it still protects like the overwintering germinated plants. And then at that point, if I can get down to the soil in some spaces, go ahead and do another reseeding because I really think that the reason that I have not had good success with the grass is that maybe I need to try seeding that native grass in the spring, but I don't know. How
We
good is,
do,
oh yeah.
I was gonna say, we do have another question about the water quality in the adjacent creek.
Yeah, that's a good question. So last year in the Ecological Action Studio, we had a project where the city of Denton wanted us to look at a section of stream that they might think about like making it flow all the time. And so the stream right down, uh, like downstream of the pollinated prairie pond is what we looked at. And it had exceptional water quality. It was clear. The turbidity, was great. Like meaning there was no turbidity. And we found lots of critters there. And so it really does um, go to show. So let me back up a minute. So in my aquatic training, I learned about H.B.N. Hines. H.B.N. Hines was the father of aquatic ecology, and he had this saying that the valley rules the stream. And I think that our pond and leaving that riparian vegetation along with this grassland may really be doing the trick, showing that the valley rules the stream and you get good water quality from it.
That's good to know. All right, I think that was our last question. This was a wonderful presentation. We would love to have you speak again sometime.
Yeah.
And I am personally interested in hearing about the cover crops and how they do. So I'll be touching base with you on that, and we'd be happy to share information on what our chapter is doing as well.
I would love to hear about it. Yeah, Sam told me to ask directly Lisa and Rick about some of their projects. And so any pieces of advice that you have for the restoration or reconstruction work, but then also the rescue work, I will gladly take.
All right, I will be happy to connect you with some people to talk about that then. All
Mhm.
right. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. I know it's a busy season and we appreciate you taking time out to talk to us. It was a great presentation and
Yay.
we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a very happy holidays.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
All right.